voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Cathy. Hey, how are you? Good morning. This is Linda Zwane from Newcastle, in Newcastle. Yeah. I would like to talk about Fresh Jivambu. I get it. No. I think the decline has started now with Floyd Shivambu. He's going he's already declining. He's only going down now to ATMs and Busa and all these other political parties. But his political career, I know, started to decline from that trip to whatever Shiburi thing. I know. That's when it started. He's gone down. He's going down, and I'm very disappointed because this guy was a very, very, very good politician. I don't know what happened to him.
Well, it's true, Cathy, that there's been a lack of scrutiny on the part of NPA when it comes to some cases. But the NPA is not alone. It seems as if even us as the public, even including the media, we don't scrutinize these things. Because if we did, we would know that there was never a case in the first place. If you followed Cholote's testimony in the Zondo inquiry, you cannot but come to a conclusion. There was no case even in the beginning. It's not a mistake or a lack of scrutiny on that, but there was never a case, and it happens with a lot of cases. We just follow the headlines and our biases and we make conclusions without scrutinizing.
Hi, Cathy. Please, can you try to investigate or to question this question? Who is responsible to supply the unlicensed gun or firearms in South Africa? Because those are the people who are trying to influence crime, gender-based violence, and many things, killings here in South Africa. Can you please?
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Muzi, you're also calling us from Durban this morning. Good morning.
I'd like to speak about the NPA, Ace Mahashule case. You see, Sis Cathy, we're going to have a serious problem in this country if we do not open our eyes and see what is exactly happening here in this country. You know, NPA is complaining about things like short staff or incapacity or all those things, or budgets. They don't have enough money to do whatever. But they are busy investigating cases that are not there, the hearsay. That's where they're putting all their effort in. Where there is evidence, like Phala Phala Farm, where the evidence is there, everything is there for them to prosecute. They are being driven by people who have a financial muscle to look and go find that from those people and not find anything from those people. That is why we're having this problem. Just about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the president of the country went to the Oval House in America. They admitting that we have a problem in our country. Please come and help us. COSATU was there. They were also saying the same thing. Come and help us. But now, there are the people who are driving NPA to go and investigate their political opponents. They're keeping them busy doing nothing, finding something that is not there. Look at the Just Zondo Commission. Just Zondo Commission, they've taken a lot of money from our taxpayers' money. They put it and try and investigate and try and find that is not there from people. Try and look for something that is not there. Now, after they concluded what they do, they're kicking the ball into the NPA. They said, NPA prosecute. NPA is saying, we cannot prosecute because there's no evidence. It's just a hearsay. You know why? Because now Justice Zondo now is having a problem because now we are all looking at him that he wasted too much money investigating something that is not there. Now they want Batoyi this lady Baton to be the one, to be the person who's taking all the, what can I say, to be the one as if she's not doing her work properly because she cannot prosecute, even though she's saying that there is no evidence. So what I'm saying is that our NPA are being driven by people who are fighting their political opponents using our state institutions. We're going to have a serious problem in this country.
So effectively, you don't believe that the NPA has been able to rid itself of these claims, allegations of political interference, which have been there, right from the time of the Thabo Mbeki presidency, right? That was a seminal moment, I think, for this particular institution. And you say that we're still dealing with an NPA that is struggling with that.
Exactly, Cathy.
Okay.
Now, that is why I support the people who are saying we need to change constitution in this country. Agencies like the NPA, like judiciary, they are supposed to be changed. We need the overhaul, everything. We need to change and start afresh because they are being influenced. You cannot hide away from that. They are influenced. Judges are being influenced. NPA are being influenced. Police are being influenced. And we go to America and complain and say we have a serious crime in our country. But while we having our institution, we are influencing them to go and do our political dirty work.
Muzi, let's leave it there. Muzi out in Durban, raising concerns there about, again, the kind of picture that this paints. You already heard Ace Magashule has long maintained that this is part of a political agenda, political conspiracy against him. And this is really why he was also kicked out as General Secretary of the ANC, right? Because of the charges that he was facing and needed to answer to. And that played a significant role in the political developments of how things unfolded in the country to becoming what they are, right? It shifted the political tectonic plates, as it were. Aisha, you're in Uppington. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. Cathy, you had a caller on the radio a couple of days ago from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. But she was from some cultural organization talking about virginity testing. But during that conversation, she made a suggestion, which I second that motion. She said, we need a Department of Culture, and I couldn't agree with her more, because all of the focus and the funding goes to all the other forms of the arts. And it only makes sense because if you look at the Department of Science and Technologies, IKS focus, they need a Department of Culture which will assist them to get the information that they require.
So Aisha, a Department of Culture separate from arts, so
yes.
The fact that we have arts and culture together for you is a problem.
Yes, because they focus on dance, drama, film, all those other things, right? That is not the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is preserving culture.
Yeah.
And the social benefits that it will derive to society.
We already have so many departments, Aisha, and without necessarily being seen to be making a comment on the importance of the preservation of culture, because that could take place in multiple ways, right? It's not only about having a department, because you can have a department but lack institutions that could very well do a better job at arriving at that outcome than having a department. Is that not part of where the focus should be?
What institutions are you talking about?
So if you look at a country like the US, one of the things that I found they do very well is have different kinds of institutions, whether they're dealing specifically with culture, whether they're dealing specifically with preserving memory, preserving culture, and that is happening within the country, but it's happening at an institution level and not necessarily at a departmental level in the way that you're envisioning it. So if we had more organizations that are there doing the work that you're pointing to, rather than having a whole department that might not do that work. It's about efficiency. Are we already getting value for money where we do have departments that are mandated with doing certain things, but it's not happening?
So what are you saying? You are saying that there should be private institutions doing this.
They could be publicly funded as well. I'm saying that does it need a department, Aisha? Is the only way to get to the outcome of what you want to see happening? Is the only way to arrive there through a department?
Okay, I will think about that.
Okay, Aisha, no problem. Think about it, let me know. Because we already have so many departments, and some of them, honestly, one sits there and thinks, what do you actually do? And you look at the budget allocations that are given to these departments as well. Look at the Department of Women, Youth and People with Disabilities. They carry such an important mandate. But if you look at the budget that is given to a department like that, number one, very small budget. Number two, theirs is to see how the rest of government is adhering to the policy objectives around women, youth, and people with disabilities. And at the end of the day, when it comes to the reporting, they rely on the other departments to tell them, well, 10% of our budgeting went towards women, went towards youth. And sometimes it's yes, it exists in form, but is it really efficient? Does it get us to the outcomes that we need?
Okay. I don't have to think about it. Yes, I agree. So that is not the way.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, bye.
Okay, all right, Aisha. Yeah, look, I think it's really part of the conversation, because ultimately we need to start having better outcomes for the input and the resources that we are putting into some of these state functions that we have. David in Pietermaritzburg, good morning.
One is seriously concerned about the tendency of these organizations such as AfriForum, Solidarity, DA, the one that's dealing with tax, I forgot the actual name. I think it's Wayne Duvenage organization. They seem to be silent whenever matters of corruption involved their fellow whites. Currently, there's a matter involving the former COO of ESCOM. I think it's Opel Hosa. And I bet you my life, and you won't hear them commenting. To me, I don't think they are credible because they always raise matters that involve black people only. And I'm questioning as to, do they mean that whatever wrong that is done by white people should be ignored? And for me, I'm starting not to take them serious because they're not patriotic about our country.
David, is it matters relating to black people, or is it matters around their interests? And there could be an intersection of both. But do you genuinely believe that they're driven by wanting to give black people a bad name or make them look a particular way? Or do they follow the issues where they know they have the greatest interest? And they've shown themselves to want to protect that interest at all costs.
No, but Cathy, for me, if they are patriotic about South Africa, they should be raising such matters, because here, Opelhoza was the former CEO, and it's being discovered that is the chairperson now of this Umlilo company that is being awarded a lucrative tender, ESCOM tender. For me, it's an interesting matter that they should follow, because it involves the taxpayers' money. Because I can bet you my last friend, if Opelhoza was a black person, they'll be making a lot of noise about it.
Patriotic to the point where it affects their interests, David.
Yeah, but DA, for instance, is portraying an image of representing all South Africans. But to me, they've never shown that. Because there's no single matter that involves a white person that they've pursued. For instance, Tutu Zilemiene, the late Tutu Zilemiene, may her soul rest in peace, she was declared a delinquent director. But you have Maria Ramos, who manipulated the rand. No one amongst these organizations have pursued that matter to ensure that Maria Ramos as well is declared a delinquent director or a person. She's still operating, because she's white. It's clear. So for me, if they're patriotic about this country, they're interested in seeing things change for the better, they should change the way they do things.
Okay. I hear you, David, but maybe the other question then to ask is, where are the other organizations?
Yeah, the problem
that will take up.
Yeah,
that you feel are not being taken up, because obviously you're saying that there's a gap. So where are the other organizations to come and fill the gap?
We don't have. We have all they claim to be representing black people, but if you look at matters such as women working in farms, you can see that they are on their own. Whereas if a matter involves white people, you see AfriForum and other white organizations, they're up in arms. They address those matters.
Yeah, maybe that's something else to think about. Hey, David.
Yeah.
Okay. David in Pietermaritzburg, we'll leave it there. I'm still taking more of your calls. You're listening to the National Round Table. It's your open line. Everybody has a seat on 086 000 2032, on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. Starts 28 May. S3, open up.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Night Talk with Oliver Dixon.
When leaders need to account, we call on them. When society needs to debate, reflect, and advance, we're here to have the conversation. Join me, Oliver Dixon, on Night Talk every Monday to Thursday from 10 to 12 midnight.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Temba, you're in Matatiele. Very good morning to you, Temba. You want to raise the issue of the Walter Sisulu University.
No, Sister, ma'am.
Yeah, Pila Temba, go for it.
Thank you, Siskit. Siskit, I'm just wondering now, okay, what is happening now in Wusu now, whereby the students are processing and are even having petrol bombs according to the video, to the live videos that are being showed. You see now, meaning now, there will be more element of violent criminality again. What if now one student gets shot, or maybe because I believe one police officer has been injured by the stone? So I'm asking myself, sometimes our judicial does listen to the people, sometimes they don't, because I believe that they said they don't want him to be given bail, but he was given bail. But at times I think of in my area where there was a case and the victim said he doesn't want the suspect to be released in the same place. Then the victim was listened to, then the perpetrator was released into another area. So I'm asking myself, when do they listen to the people, when do they don't? I know the judicial is independent, but I'm just thinking sitting here now.
Yeah, Temba, I've actually been monitoring some of the visuals that are coming through from Walter Sisulu University this morning on SABC 404, and it's very, very concerning because
yes, that's what I'm
you
watching.
have these, you can see the confrontations that are happening there. With the police, the stones being thrown at police officers, but you also see, police trying to manage the situation. When I look at it, unfortunately, it takes us back to that whole debate or conversation around public order policing and are we learning any lessons? Unfortunately, the way that the protest is taking place right now, if it is not managed correctly, we could be talking about something else tomorrow. That's my concern, given how volatile it is, but also just seeing how it's being managed.
How it's being managed, and I believe they'll bring more police officials from another towns. So now think again of the financial implications that will be added on, because those police officials will have to be accommodated.
Yeah. Very concerning, Temba. Very concerning.
Very concerning. And the road, you see those stone thrones, definitely they damage the road. I'm not blaming the students, but they also, you see now what is happening now. We're trying to fix this, yet we're damaging this.
It's a failure of leadership, Temba. It's a failure of leadership. For me, the situation has been deteriorating for some time. There's been ample opportunity to have the appropriate type of interventions for what it is that the students are raising and what we know happened at that institution. You already have people that have lost their lives. But when there's no clear leadership, this unfortunately becomes the outcome.
Becomes the outcome. Thank you, Susketi.
All right, Temba. Sintu in Midrand, good morning.
Hi, how are you, Kevin?
Hi, Sintu. Bye-bye.
How are you?
Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Kathy, I just want to address this misnomer that Floyd has been demoted, of which in
is
your
it a misnomer?
Remarks, yes, from me. Let me explain why I'm saying that.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, because with your opening remarks, you also alluded to that. You see, you know what? You must look at this thing in two folds. Remember, when you are Secretary General, right, politically, you are part of the deployment, you are leading the deployment committee, but which is not the case in the MK. If you look at it, I think the final word comes from the president, unlike from other organizations. You see. And I also believe, Katie, that some of us might be vindicated now, because when Floyd resigned from the EFF, we thought that he was heading straight to Parliament, because he indicated that he was not joining MK party because of he wanted position. He wanted to be Crown Force, and he was given the position of being a national organizer, of which he was elevated to become the Secretary General. But I'm glad that he's heading back to Parliament, where he's going to make very meaningful contribution, because MK party has been at lull there. If you look at it, it has been overshadowed by EFF. You see, although the EFF is not an official opposition, but by bringing forth Floyd there, I think things are going to change. We are going to start hearing MK being vocal on critical issues that will take the country forward. You see,
and he'll have to report to Colleen Makubela there as the chief whip?
Yes, of course. That's a bit of politics. These are politics, you see, because these are politics, you see. You know, because these changes do happen. We might not know that a year from now, Colin Makuba will be replaced by the very same Floyd. You understand what I'm trying to say, Cathy? You see, because I know the boy can excel anywhere where he can be deployed, you see. But his detractors within the MK party might think that they are trying to destroy him, but you'll see, I'm telling you, the boy is going to excel. But he has not been demoted because we need him there so that our voice can be heard in that particular parliament. Because Abamzwandile are not doing anything there.
Okay, Sindu. Let's leave it there. Like I said, not for the faint-hearted politics. Mojalefa, you'll be a final caller. Good morning. Oh, that's never a good sound when you hear that. It means that our lines have dropped. Apologies for that, Mojalefa. We do apologize. Our technicians are working on this issue. And I apologize profusely to all of you because I know you hear it sometimes throughout the day, especially when we're bringing you in to be part of the conversation. All right, coming up in the second hour of the show for Citizens Corner, we're going to look at security, particularly on farms in rural areas. We have been speaking about just the extent to which so many of our farming communities have been left vulnerable to crime with very little to defend themselves. So we'll find out from those that are working in the space how serious is the problem and what are some of the interventions that are being put in place. That's coming up on the other side of 10 o'clock during Citizens Corner. For now, it's time for your latest news update.
Top stories: Mohlahlana eager for court proceedings in asbestos case, and Gaza aid distribution halted after fatal shooting. With the news, I'm Dinoma Daung. Good morning. Former Free State Premier S. Mohlahlana says he looks forward to the asbestos court case that is scheduled to continue in the Free State High Court. Mohlahlana's comments come after the Free State High Court ruled that the extradition of his former PA Moradi Choloda was unlawful. Choloda was considered as a star witness in the asbestos matter. Mohlahlana and 17 of his co-accused, which include businessman Edwin Sodi, have been charged with fraud, corruption and money laundering in the 255 million rand asbestos saga.
I'm looking forward, but I don't just want this case I don't want just a withdrawal here. I want to be acquitted because I have not done anything wrong. If I'm guilty of anything, of corruption, of maladministration, of whatever, of oversight and whatever they charge me with, the public knows me as a corrupt person. So I will still want my day in court so that I take the stand and I expose what has not been exposed until today. My time will come, and I'm sure, I hope that MPA will continue with their case.
Moving to the Eastern Cape, the situation is still tense on the N2 road near Walter Sisulu University in Mthatha. This as students are in confrontation with the police who are trying to maintain order. The students are not happy with yesterday's ruling after the local magistrates court granted the institution's residence manager, Manelisi Mampane, a 10,000 rand bail. Mampane faces murder and attempted murder charges after the death of a student during protests. Police spokesperson Nobuntu Khantana elaborates.
What is happening is that the students are protesting. This is following the bail of the murder suspect in the case of Sisonke Molekwa. So we are here as the police trying to maintain order and to keep the students away from the N2 and to also ensure that there is no one that is harmed in the process. But what I can say is that as the police, we will not tolerate lawlessness and vandalism of state property, and that we will ensure that whoever that is in infringement of that will actually be brought to book.
In Gauteng, police say they will not tolerate lawlessness in Westbury after members of their anti-gang unit were attacked in the area yesterday. Police spokesperson Atlenda Mate says the anti-gang unit conducted stop and search operations when they found a man in possession of drugs. But when they placed the men under arrest, community members started mobilizing themselves and throwing police with rocks and bottles. Mate says members tactically withdrew from the situation to ensure the safety of the community that was attacking them.
The community of Westbury have from time to time been complaining about the high levels of crime, including drug dealing in the area. We have deployed the anti-gang unit to deal decisively with this type of crime, but it seems as though when police take charge and enforce the law, communities turn on them and attack them. We cannot allow such a situation. We need the community to appreciate, support and work with the police and not attack them. We cannot and will not tolerate this lawlessness.
Staying in Gauteng, the Police and Prisons Civil Rights Union will embark on a series of rolling pickets across police academies in the province. The pickets are in response to growing concerns around the reported sexual victimization of vulnerable trainees. The union says that its protests follow a South African police captain accused of raping a female trainee at the training academy in Pretoria West in March. Pop Crew spokesperson is Richard Mamabolo.
There has been an incident which has been reported in the past week. So the person is currently going through court processes. I think the next appearance is on the 9th. And our members throughout those court appearances have been there to support the trainee who has been violated. And of course, even in the past years, there have been incidents which were reported, not necessarily of a sexual nature, but of course, we have taken note of some of these things. So we have picked up that clearly there's a pattern where some of these things are happening within centers. So we've picked that up and of course, as you know, are deeply concerned.
Lastly, further afield, the U.S. and Israeli-backed emergency relief in Gaza is being closed today after repeated deadly violence linked to the operation. The group behind the much criticized food distribution program, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, said the operation was being suspended to allow for organizational and efficiency improvements. Since Sunday, dozens of Palestinians have been killed as they tried to collect food. The spokesperson for the UN Human Rights Office, Jeremy Lawrence, called the attacks extreme.
There must be a prompt and impartial investigation into each of these attacks and those responsible held to account. Attacks directed against civilians constitute a grave breach of international law and a war crime.
Recapping the top story this hour, former Free State Premier Ace Magashule says he looks forward to the asbestos court case that is scheduled to continue in the Free State High Court. Headlines at 10:30 with Onde Lambana for SAFM News. I'm Dinomo Taung.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
In a land scorched by the sun and shaped by time, life refuses to surrender. From the silent stalk of the Arabian leopard to the resilient march of the sand gazelle, witness nature's fiercest survivors. Arabian Inferno, a journey into one of Earth's most extreme habitats where every day is a battle for survival. This is the wild. This is Arabian Inferno. Sundays at 6 p.m. on S3. Open up.
Bafana are looking for nothing but maximum points to have a decent position in Group A. But neighbors Zimbabwe want to put their best foot forward to triumph. This is the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025. Do not miss out on the thrilling action of Southern African football. South Africa battles it out with Zimbabwe. This Saturday, 7 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC One. Also available on SABC radio stations. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 8 after 10 o'clock. Welcome to the second hour of the Talking Point as we lead conversations that move us on the show this morning. Coming up in this hour, we'll be looking into Citizens Corner. And for today, we are paying attention to the issue of security, in particular farm security in rural areas, and some of the challenges that small-scale farmers are facing in that regard, and the interventions then that are also being put in place to try and assist the situation. Yes, we are also watching, or at least I'm also watching, the feed coming through out of Walter Sisulu University, where that student protest is taking place this morning. We'll keep a close eye on that for you as the morning progresses, and if there are any further significant developments, we will bring them to you. But a very concerning situation, and as I have said, the issue of public order policing is one that again comes into the spotlight. You have rocks and stones that are being thrown at police officers. You have police inyalas that are on scene trying to maintain some level of law and order, but it is concerning how things are unfolding there. And one really would hope that there's a great deal of caution that is applied here, especially because we already have a record of deaths that have taken place at this institution previously. Not today, previously, but that presents, in and of itself, it presents a certain threat. Before we get into your WhatsApp voice notes, I want to read this message because earlier in the open line, there was a question around greeting, right, and the role of greeting. And the point being made by Nhlanhla Buthelezi is saying that Fritjovambu is not a sociable person. Sometimes he doesn't greet people, and that's why he might come off in a particular way as a leader. So I asked whether or not greeting says anything about you, your leadership capabilities. One of our listeners says, yes, Cathy, greeting people, particularly your constituency in leadership, is an attribute in African culture. You can't lead people when you can hardly care to pay attention to them. Greeting in African culture implies, I notice you and I respect you. So then does that mean you must greet if there's a hall full of 1,000 people, you must go and shake everybody's hand? I'm being facetious. I know that that's not exactly what you're supposed to do, but the point is being made. And we will not apply that to the open line, by the way. The rules for the open line stay as you are, as they are. Don't ask how I am. Can say good morning. No asking how I am. Let's play your WhatsApp voice notes.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hi, Cathy. Talking about where are the other organizations that will take up matters that as they pertain to black struggles and suffering. That talks to who owns the economy and who runs the. We only have a political power. Even then, it's bought. It's bought by the highest bidder. Look at Nazareth. So that question talks to who owns the means of this country.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Makwarela Chinyazo from Thohoyandou. You know what, Cathy? The NPA has been downgraded to an ordinary, useless institution for many years. You know, some of us are not surprised by this judgment of the former A.S. Mahashule's PA that ruled in your favor. Because, let's read here, because since when has the NPA succeeded in prosecuting a prominent politicians? You know, we are here sitting with the recommendations of the State Capture Commission, where we are yet to see those prominent politicians implicated in the state captures being locked behind bars. They are walking free out.
Good morning, Cathy and SAFM listeners. This is Vicky Boni from Forge in KZN. Cathy, I want to talk about Kaizer Chiefs. Hey, I wish you bring Bobby Mutaung here on the studio to tell us as supporters of Kaizer Chiefs, why is he so stingy? He doesn't want to pay the high players. Or if he can't, let him tell us or give us a go-ahead. We as supporters to donate our own money to buy our own players. We are sick and tired of this nonsense. Bobby is too stingy. He must just get off that chair if it is too hot for him. Thank you.
Morning, Kathy. It's Kuligani from Richards Bay. Kathy, just a quick question. What do you do to de-stress, to relax? Because I'm worried, Kathy, that you're going to get burnouts again. Listening to all these issues of all the people, the politics and everything every day, going through the same thing, or same issues, politics, whatnot. I'm worried about your mental health, Kathy. So just what do you do to de-stress, to forget about all of these complaints and issues in politics? Just get away from it all on the weekends. Thanks, Kathy.
Someone must just tell Floyd where home is. The EFF is home. So he must just go back and ask forgiveness. I believe the CIC will forgive him. From a deputy president of a political party to a secretary general, now to just a mere member of the parliament. So yeah, he must just go home and apologize. I believe CIC will forgive him. We as EFF supporters, we still love the guy. And we forgive him for leaving us to MK. He must just feel free to come back home. Thank you, Kathy. Terrence here.
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the wild mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaiki. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Bigger office, more staff, a new location? Growth takes investment, and a business term loan from Standard Bank gives you the capital you need to expand on your terms. With competitive interest rates, fixed monthly repayments, and a dedicated support team, you can plan ahead with confidence. Keep your business growing with a Standard Bank business term loan. Visit standardbank.co.za/business loans to apply. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Are you looking for the best savings on spectacles? At Specsavers, enjoy 1,500 Rand off when you get tested at South Africa's trusted and most established optical group. Get 1,500 Rand off all frames in store, or use your 1,500 Rand off on our leading lens enhancements, such as drive light lenses that reduce artificial glare whilst driving. Book online or call your nearest store today. Affordable eye care, Specsavers. T's and C's apply.
It's a game of two halves, represented by two national flags, and both nations are chasing victory to bring joy to their citizens. This is more than just an international friendly. It is the Southern African derby. Mzansi's Bafana Bafana face the Mambas of Mars. Catch the incredible action of African football. South Africa versus Mozambique on Tuesday, 10 June at 7 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and S3. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
Tando Patu wrote the book On the Rocks, Memoir of a High-Functioning Alcoholic.
I came across the term when I was in Delphi. I was in denial about my alcoholism. I took on a management position. It was very demanding. It was stressful. It was my first.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, we continue the conversation on the talking point. Before I introduce our next guest who will be joining us for the rest of the hour, I want to take you live to Bloemfontein. This is the High Court there. Ace Mohlahlana speaking, where his asbestos trial has been postponed to the 26th of January 2026.
Do you have perhaps yourself that record of that meeting?
Wait until I am in the box, because I've said I want my day in court. And I'm going to prove that this case is political, because political giants and heavyweights will be here in this court.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mohlahlana. I'm also going to bring in the NPA spokesperson, Mthunzi Mahanga, just to talk to us about the postponement. You can see that the accused are actually quite heated this morning due to the postponement that the judge has just granted. Talk to us about the appeal that the state is intending to put forward.
Importantly is the fact that there is an appetite to appeal the judgment because of its far-reaching implications in respect of a lot of extradition applications that we've made, and given the fact that the state believes that there is evidence that implicates Ms. Cholota and therefore would want to see her stand trial. Unfortunately, the judge is yet to provide us with a full written judgment upon which a decisive
All right, there we have the NPA's advocate Mthunzi Mahanga, spokesperson, talking again, making the point around how they're planning on appealing yesterday's decision. But before we went to Mthunzi, to Mr. Mahanga, we had Ace Mohlahlana speaking there with his co-accused, very upset about the developments and as far as this postponement is concerned, but again maintaining the fact that yesterday's court ruling in Cholota's matter is an indication of the fact that there has never been any solid case against him. And it is going to continue to be one of those stories that we watch very closely. Well, as we look at the issue of crime and how crime affects the entire country, we know that different constituencies are exposed and vulnerable in different ways. Farming communities in particular have become easy targets for stock theft, vandalism, not only to their property but also the tools that they use to go about doing their day-to-day work. Let me welcome onto the show Peter Mashala, who is a farmer and also a farming journalist. Peter, good morning to you.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners.
Roundy Peters is Director of Farmers Network South Africa. Roundy, good morning. Good morning, Roundy. All right, I'm not sure what is happening with Roundy's line. Maybe let's try get him up on a different line. Mr. Tibase, you're the Deputy Chairperson of the Farmers Structure at KwaBaqa in the Eastern Cape. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. And Domain Judge, you are Sales and Marketing Executive at Trelidor. Good morning, Domain.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, thank you, Domain. Thank you for being part of this conversation. Let me see if we can go back to Roundy Peters. Roundy, can you hear me now?
Yes, Cathy, good morning.
Wonderful. Good morning. Good morning. Apologies for that in terms of getting through to you the first time round. I think a good place for us to start, especially because of how much this issue around crime within the farming sector is concerned, how much of an issue it has been nationally, especially in light of the claims around a genocide, white genocide against farmers, against white farmers in particular, taking place. Peter, the point has been made that crime in this country affects people of all races, and this includes within the farming sector. But perhaps if you can start off by giving us a sense of how deep is the problem that we're dealing with, that farming communities overall are facing.
Well, Cathy, I think I may just start with an incident that just occurred last night. You know, I'm on various WhatsApp groups, farmers WhatsApp groups, and we got a message this morning from the Free State, and a lady was saying they got attacked last night. People with guns who took about just over 32 sheep in Leeuwfontein in the Free State. So it's gotten worse. Now it's no longer about going to bed and finding your stock missing. So now these now are organized syndicates who move onto farms with guns and taking over livestock. So it's just gotten worse. I mean, like we were now looking at the statistics now in terms of how much the stock theft cost to the whole economy. I mean, like the agricultural economy. Livestock theft is costing the economy about 1.4 billion. That is out of the 26 or 30 billion that the livestock contribute to the GDP. So you can see how huge this problem is.
Peter, this concept of this crime being driven by organized crime syndicates, do you think that it's getting the kind of attention that it deserves? Because for a long time, when we had stock theft happening in rural communities, there was always the impression that, no, it's just, a group of naughty boys or, people that are taking chances. But it seems to have evolved quite significantly from then. So you can't, let's say, go 2 villages next door and you'll find your livestock and be able to bring it back. And also the scale at which it is happening, where vehicles are there ready to transport these animals. Trying to move 32 sheep is no easy feat. You have to be organized. You have to know what you're doing.
Yes, I mean, Cathy, first of all, I don't think there's enough will to deal with the crime. I mean, I don't think people still, the powers that be are taking this very serious. I mean, you're right. I mean, we had an incident, a few months ago where one of my farming friends got them with 72 cows. I mean, sheep. Yeah, I can put the sheep in the quantum easy. But if you're gonna load steal in one night, you're gonna steal 72 cattle. I mean, matured cattle. There's a lot of logistics that you need to prepare. I mean, it's not even just a simple truck. It's a huge livestock truck that you need. And I mean, moving those animals from one town to the next. It's also seemed to be a very coordinated effort. I don't think really we are serious. I mean, when I say we, I'm talking about now the people who should be responsible for ensuring safety in the rural areas. I think really we still not willing to deal with this problem.
Roundy, let me come to you and perhaps you can speak to us about some of the other patterns and trends that you have been observing around this kind of crime.
Thanks to you, Cathy, and thanks to the listeners. In the Alfred Resort District, because us as Farmers Network South Africa, we are based in the Eastern Cape, particularly in the Alfred Resort District. Yes, what has just been said is very true, that crime in South Africa is very vast, and unfortunately our small-scale farmers, they are not immune to it. We have experienced a lot of stock theft in this area of ours. That has also led to a death of our farmers in some instances. We are in the Alfred Resort that covers Matatiele, Bizana, Umzimba municipalities, it consists of Mount Elif and Mount Frey. Our farmers, they are so exposed to these kinds of crimes. Remember, Kate, that our area is prone to poverty. So when the people go to the mines for jobs, when coming back, they buy the livestock to feed their families. Now, when you experience these kind of things, it's so painful because they lose everything and they lose also their lives. It becomes a question of, are we doing enough to curb this kind of criminal act? Because it's been there for a very long time, as you have said, Cathy. It's been existing for as long as I can remember. But unfortunately, I can't stand here and say there's something that is being done. I'm not even sure at this point if there is anything that is done to curb these criminal activities.
Around the point that you're making around how this impacts the individual farmer, I think is such an important one, because most of the time we're dealing with people that are small-scale farmers. There's only so much of a blow that you can take. If you've taken all of the money that you've had and bought 32 sheep, and that's part of what is your retirement plan, when it's stolen, it leaves you with nothing in your pocket.
Yeah. Exactly. That's how it is, Cathy. When it is stolen, that's why our people, our small-scale farmers, try to fight. But unfortunately, the fight that they are trying to fight, they are not winning it. We cannot be expecting our people to lose everything, and nothing is being done about that. Recently, in Okapaka, that was formerly known as Mount Frey, there was a march that was here. Our small-scale farmers, they marched to the police station to say we need an intervention. We need the government to intervene. We need our police people to intervene. We need the security of this country to intervene, because it seems as if we are fighting a losing battle as small-scale farmers.
All right.
Because we have never seen someone that is convicted after they've committed this kind of crime. Instead, our people, they lose their lives on a daily basis.
Around here, I'm going to pause it there. We're going to continue with this conversation shortly. Mr. Chibase and Domain will hear from you after the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines on SAFM, I am on Delambana and a very good morning. Eastern Cape Police have confirmed that 3 students have been arrested following a violent protest at Walter Sisulu University's Nelson Mandela Drive campus in Mthatha. Former Free State Premier Ace Makhashule says he looks forward to the asbestos court case that is scheduled to continue in the Free State High Court. Makhashule's comments come after the Free State High Court ruled that the extradition of his former PA Muruadi Cholota was unlawful, and the 35-year-old man is appearing at the Mage Magistrates Court in Limpopo for allegedly raping a 15-year-old girl at Makwibidung in Tzaneen. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand currently trading at 17 rand 81 to the dollar, 24 rand 09 to the pound, and 20 rand 28 to the euro. Markets in Asia extended gains at the closing bell. The JSE green across the board in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are higher this hour. Gold is trading at $3,356, platinum $1,080 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $65.64 a barrel.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Take a bite full of mystery on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 contestants face off in the Elimination Challenge. It's all about fine dining desserts and finesse, inspired by South Africa's first award-winning halal fine dining restaurant, the Happy Uncles. Who will taste sweet victory? That's the Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Do you want to study towards a tertiary qualification but need a flexible study schedule? Stadio Higher Education's distance learning qualifications offer just that. Our distance learning support is designed for your success. 2025 applications to Stadio's range of high-quality, affordable qualifications are now open. Distance learning qualifications are available in law, administration and management, commerce, teacher education, policing, law enforcement, humanities, and information technology. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
You're listening to the Talking Point, Citizens Corner this hour, and we're looking at, in particular, crime in as far as it relates to rural communities and farming communities. Joining us for this conversation, Peter Mashala is a farmer and also a journalist focusing on that particular sector. Roundy Peters, Director of Farmers Network South Africa, and Mr. Chibase is Deputy Chairperson of the Farmers Structure at Gwabaga in the Eastern Cape, and Domain Judge is Sales and Marketing Executive at Trelido. Mr. Chibase, let me come to you then and give you an opportunity to speak to us about what you have seen to be the impact of this crime that is happening at a local level.
Greetings to you, Cathy, to the listeners at home. Greetings also to Peter and Rondi, my fellow panelists. Cathy, this is going to be like we're echoing on the same thing, especially to Rondi and I, because we're coming from the same vicinity of Alfred Nzo. It is one of the painful things what is happening right now on the livestock. It is no longer a stock theft anymore. I think that it needs to be given an attention in the sense that if you remember when there was this thing of, they were calling it, what do you call this thing, where police are? Where the police, they paid attention to that thing. What was it?
Just the commandos.
Yeah, but it needs an attention where the officers of the law will pay attention to it, because what is happening right now, when these guys come and steal or take your cattle in your class, they come with guns. And most of the time, these people are known people in our areas. But our laws, when you go and report a person, they need evidence. If you don't have an evidence, your case cannot stand a ground in court. And whenever it's like that, these guys, they don't get arrested. If they are arrested, they don't get sentenced in our court of laws. An example, yesterday, a day before yesterday, 167 ships were taken in one of the areas in Mandileni. Up until today, they have not yet found. Last 2 years, more than 70 cattle were taken in our area. We only found 2 when you go to the site of Makriye and you ask yourself, how did those cattle get there? It tells you that they were transported. It is no longer about the boys that are naughty around, but there are people behind that. It is an organized crime where it needs a special attention so that you can eradicate it. And this thing, it is very painful in our rural areas because most people, when these things are happening, are getting killed by these criminals. And an example, there is a place called Etungweni here around Manfred where one of the farmers was killed by some boys. Up until today, those boys, they were never arrested. There was never happened to them. They are just strolling around the community because the SAPS says that there is not enough evidence to arrest them. Whereas the deceased person declared before he died that so-and-so is the one that came and shot me here. After that, the person died. But because that person is not here now, then the case doesn't stand the ground in court. It is very painful. To a point that on the last gathering that we had a march around that declared that, where we were requesting the general from the SAPS to move the offices of stock theft officers from Pisana to Mount Frere, because now our stock theft officers are in Pisana, and Mount Frere was number one in the country on the last test that was issued based on stock theft only. In the country, we were number one. More than 1,500 cattle were stolen from Mount Frere by people of that side. We always point fingers on the side of Ukumbu, because there in Ukumbu there is a feedlot that is there. Where that feedlot, you will never find cattle being fed there, but you will always hear them saying there's an auction. We once visited that auction. When we get there, there were white guys who went there to buy cattle. There were 5 horse and trailers. They were full of cattle. We requested that those cattle must be offloaded, and people from Libote and Novo, they found their cattle there. But those guys, they were never arrested. And you will never hear about their case. Somehow you end up seeing that this is a big syndicate, which we suspect that even SAPS members are involved in it. Because if you go closer to the people that are working for stock theft as police officers, all of them, they have big cars, they have large stock numbers, which they are uncountable. And you ask yourself, why you are a police officer? You are at the age of 36, 37, but you have more than 40 cattle. How did you get them? When did you start buying these cattle in the rural areas? You will never get an answer, but it's theirs. While at the farmers decide that they are losing everything. It is very painful, and it is bringing poverty to our homes, because these families are depending on these cattle to send their kids at schools.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Ndate Chibase. Peter, it brings me back to the issue of being able to know where this cattle is ending up. What do we know about that? Have we been able to see any patterns around that? Is it about taking it from one province to the other, and perhaps it comes up at auctions, as Mr. Chibase has alluded to?
Cathy, I wouldn't speak for other areas, like in the Eastern Cape and stuff. But what we've seen us here in Gauteng is there's quite a few markets that are very active. I mean, the auctions are one, and we have in Pretoria. I think I'm speaking for most of the townships in the Gauteng. We've seen a surge in these, informal restaurants on the road. Where we call them here in Pretoria, where people are cooking on the street and are selling. I mean, like food, pap and bones or offal and all sorts of stuff. We've seen a huge spike in those businesses. I mean, like, if you just drive on the street, I mean, you can just count how many of these informal restaurants that are there now, that were not there 10, 15 years ago. And now you look at the rate in which stock theft is going, and how this thing, you can easily, I mean, we've done our patrols, we've tried that, but you can see this is not stopping, but we know that this is where most of the livestock is ending in this restaurant. There are no regulation. Anyone can just buy meat wherever. I mean, like, you go to taxi rank, you go to anywhere, you'll find just people selling meat there. You don't know where this meat is coming from. Nobody regulates that. And I mean, the auctions are another problem. Auctions, although they are trying to curb the issue of stock theft, but it's not easy, because most of the time you'll find that even people working at the auctions are part of the problem. I mean, like, I'll give you an example. I mean, there are sort of rules or laws in auctioneering in terms of how you can sell the animals. I mean, like, one is the branding. I mean, like, the animal must be properly branded and it must match your certificate. And one of the rules is that you don't bring newly branded animals. I mean, like, you don't brand an animal today or tomorrow. You can see the brand, the brand mark. Most of it is through the hot iron. You can see if it's new or not. But having participated in those for the past years, I mean, like, you see how easy that system is in terms of moving those animals there. But yeah, I mean, like, the police are trying, but they can only do so much. I believe that the market is open in terms of these small restaurants and other informal traders, and also the formal trading in terms of auctions. Okay. There needs to be sort of a strong presence of police and other authorities in terms of that. But also these restaurants and I think it's just free for all. Everybody is doing it, and most of it we see. I mean, like, I don't know if I should say this, but we see that most of these restaurants are operated by foreign nationals, which most of the time, where we do our operations, you'll find there are no papers, there's nothing. But these people are operating these.
All right, Peter.
These businesses.
Let me bring in Domain here, and Domain is quite a difficult thing that police are obviously struggling with policing this kind of crime. We've seen farming communities sort of take the initiative themselves. They form these WhatsApp groups, they form patrol groups, they find ways of trying to increase the layers of security. From the perspective of a company like Trelidor, what is the kind of work that you are doing with farmers and that you're engaging them on when it comes to how they can better protect themselves?
Morning, Cathy, and thanks again for the opportunity, and morning to the listeners and fellow panelists. I think the discussion's obviously got a lot of focus on the agriculture and the livestock criminality, and listening to it, I wish that we could do something in that space, obviously. But from a brand perspective, we're very much focused on the home, your doors and windows and safe rooms within that home. So the work that we really try to do with those communities that you speak about, Cathy, is that everything relies on time. So all of this response, the fellow panelists have already highlighted that generally the farms are in sort of outlying areas, difficult to get to, a lot of space. And I think, unfortunately, as organized, even when you are as organized as you can be, there's still a long lag of time between when an incident is reported or an alarm is triggered to when help can be there in these communities, given the nature of the roads and as well the distances between the properties. So really, from a brand perspective, we're trying to offer product and supply product into that space that just gives the guys as much time as possible to get to those incidences before anything serious has happened. So that's what you'll get from Trelidor in that space is the best products to buy as much time as possible to allow the WhatsApp groups and the community responses and hopefully the police as well to be able to get there in time. That's really focused on the home, though. Obviously, we can't do much on the agricultural side, which has been a big topic this morning.
Domain, unpack that a bit for me. When you say that you are trying to give them as much time as possible, what then are the kind of solutions that people are coming to you with? But also, are you seeing that this is a market that is growing? Do you have more people from farming rural communities that are coming to you and saying, we actually need your services to protect ourselves. Because as you can hear, if people are being held at gunpoint at night, that's not happening in the field. They're actually going to people's homes and forcing them out of their homes to give them access to whichever part of the land they might need access to.
No, Cathy, you're absolutely spot on. So I think Trelleborg from a brand perspective has been selling product into the communities for over 50 years. We've got a franchise network that is well spread, very well representative in the Eastern Cape, and we do a lot of work in those rural areas. So there's definitely, we're engaging with those communities through our franchise network as often as we can. But obviously we recognize there is an affordability question mark, like Randy spoke about. The guys who are coming from their work up in the Highveld area, they've invested their money into the livestock for their future. And sometimes, unfortunately, security is not really the spend that's available right now. Fortunately, we do offer finance solutions that enable everyone to have access to security and pay it off over a longer period. And our franchise network is available to engage with guys that are struggling in that space. So we are there. We've got the biggest franchise network or security network in the country in our sector. We're represented in all the provinces, most of the cities, and close to many of the rural areas. So it is about engaging. We do try our best to get out to the communities. We attend many of the shows and in the agricultural space, and we've been friends with the farming community for a very long time. But we do need to engage more and more, and that's why we continue to look at how we can increase our franchise and distribution network across the country.
How have you seen the needs of this community change over time?
So I think, unfortunately, the nature of crime has changed quite dramatically. As we heard now, the nature would be generally sneak in at night and take a few livestock. Now it's quite organized. There's gangs or a number of people operating, and I think that's a symptom of not just the farming community and livestock. I think we're seeing that across the country in many industries that are struggling with theft. Crime has become very organized. It's not as petty or opportunistic as it used to be. And with that then comes higher levels of risk. So we've adapted. I think most people would put the Trelleborg name or brand synonymous with retractable gates or sliding security gates that famously took a wrecking ball hit in an advert many years ago. But we've evolved our product because that's obviously not a good solution in the spaces where there's guns involved. So we also offer sort of roller shutters that secure the home with no opportunity to protect against any violent crime. So we've evolved our product sets as best as possible with the needs of the customers that we've engaged with, and seen opportunity to develop those products in line with the Trelleborg standards.
Yeah, it's all really very concerning, right? The levels of crime that we're dealing with, and I guess the violent nature that it often is accompanied by. We're going to continue the conversation shortly. I see some of you have started sending through your WhatsApp voice notes and contributions on this issue. We'll take those after this break.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Take a bite full of mystery on the Tastemaster SA this Tuesday evening at 7:30 on SABC2 as the bottom 6 contestants face off in the Elimination Challenge. It's all about fine dining desserts and finesse, inspired by South Africa's first award-winning halal fine dining restaurant, the Happy Uncles. Who will taste sweet victory? That's the Tastemaster SA, Tuesday evenings at 7:30, repeat Wednesdays at 1 and Sundays at 4 p.m. on SABC2.
Oliver Dixon on SAFM.
So from a timing perspective, has the president instructed the minister over the last 2 weeks or so to complete drafting this policy directive and to gazette it as soon as possible?
To my knowledge, there hasn't been any pressure from the presidency in this regard, and I think that the communication from the office of the presidency to the media has been that Starlink wasn't specifically discussed, and so I can fully understand why the timing would look suspect.
That's Gwena Moloto, the spokesperson of the Minister of Communications and Digital Technologies, Soli Malat.
This week, today, Fridays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Hey, Sis Cathy and your panel, and good morning to all SAFM listeners. Well, speaking of stock theft, it's quite rife, and it's an order of the day in parts like Stegspruit under Joe Gabi municipality, where Lesotho nationals are being implicated into this kind of crime. And the worst part of this is that there are no borders that separate between South Africa and Lesotho in Stegspruit. So that's the main reason why crime has not been contained in whatsoever. So this is Andile from Stegspruit in the Eastern Cape near Lesotho borders.
Cathy, the reason why farmer tax is actually a unique crime is because, remember, these people are out there on their own. If they get attacked, for example, it might even take days for someone to discover that something happened to them. Unlike, in towns where if crime happens, we tend to know about it very quickly. Secondly, we have very few farmers in general. I think the last count of commercial farmers, they were below 30,000. So we really have to have a way of protecting them, prioritizing them, because these are a few individuals who are very scarce to find. Their skills is very scarce. Thank you.
Cathy, good morning. I'm Takatayo in Eastern Cape, Xofimvaba. This thing of farmers that are robbed of their livestock and their lives is going to be politicized by saying that it's not the white farmers only that are affected, instead of finding a solution so that this thing can be stopped. Cathy, I remember it was maybe 2015 in the Western Cape when the farmers said, how about the government, if they can introduce that a group of commandos who used to patrol farmers. Those people were trained in the army and make sure that they are patrolling the farms, because these people are isolated in these farms and they are the backbones of the country. But our government never listened to that. Thanks, Cathy Takata.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
And I guess that's really the question of the day then. What is to be done? Roundy, given the lack of political will that you have highlighted, given the lack of appetite or interest or whatever the reason might be coming from the authorities, and here I'm talking about the police, in investigating these matters and getting to the bottom of it, what then does that leave you as the people most affected by this crime? What position does that leave you in?
Thank you, Cathy. I think it leaves us in a position of doubting the capability of our security personnel in our government. Because now we can't be sitting with these stories in 2025. and sitting with them without having a clear solution of what needs to be done. Really, it's a question for all of us. What else has to be done? Because in many instances, our farmers have tried to protect themselves, and the government is not helping in a way, because it turns out to come and bite the farmers to say you have taken the law into your own hands. If they try to comprehend the criminals, if they catch them, they try to maybe beat them or make them to talk about where have they taken their livestock. But the law will come back to bite them to say you have taken law into your own hands. Now we have to arrest you. You are the one that's going to go to jail. You are the one that is left with no livestock and also with no future, because you have killed someone or you have committed a crime according to the government to try and take the law into your own hands. It really is a question of saying what else really needs to be done, because our farmers have tried several times. They have tried, but they are the ones that end up facing the might of the law.
Peter, that's not encouraging at all. Of course, nobody's advocating here for wholesale criminality, right, and that farmers should be a law unto themselves. But certainly when you have a situation where people feel disempowered because of what may happen if they act in self-defense, that is concerning.
Yeah, I mean, Cathy, I think you are correct. However, one also need to understand that we're talking about humans, and who get frustrated and end up having to do things that are not supposed to be done. I mean, like we've seen. I mean, like we touched on it earlier. We've seen. I mean, like people who died. People who today, I mean, like have chronic illnesses due to stress because of these things, and when you become powerless, I mean, like you then are put against the wall, and then you somehow you need to retaliate. But I believe that we as the farmers and in communities, I mean, like we're talking about these criminals being very organized. We also now need to be very organized ourselves as farmers, and we need to take a responsibility, collective responsibility in terms of how then. I mean, like if you look at I would say without being controversial, if you look at the white commercial farmers and how they've organized in terms of security, I'm not saying things are not happening on the farms, but there's less incidents there, because of how organized they are. I mean, like if you drive into these farming areas, first of the things that you notice will be the street cameras that the people have come together, put some money together privately. I mean, like put money together, install cameras, and then everybody's responsible for the security. But when you come into us, I mean, like yes, we do organize patrols and stuff, but most of the time we are very reluctant in investing in things that would assist us. I'm like talking about. I mean, I'm on a group that we've been forever talking about acquiring things like drones, which will help us. I mean, like in terms of making these animals quicker, and radios and all those things. And you'll find that we are more reluctant. You know, it becomes a long conversation that doesn't end.
All right.
But yeah, I think we need to take collective responsibilities to and organize ourselves.
We'll have to leave it there with this conversation for today. And it's unfortunate, right, that it is up to the individuals to see what they can do to protect themselves. Time for your latest news update.
Thank you, Cathy. On the top stories, asbestos case postponed to next year, and the Walter Sisulu University students arrested after violent protest. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana, and a very good morning. Free State High Court Judge Philip Lobza has postponed the 255 million rand asbestos roof removal case to the 26th of January next year. This follows submissions by the state that they will appeal Murwadi Chalota's US extradition process judgment, which favoured her. The state's prosecutor, Johan Dination, says they believe that a different court will reach to a different outcome. Cathy Mohlahlana reports
that there is immense pressure to conclude with the asbestos case as it's been on the roll for far too long. The accused were visibly agitated in court following the state's request for a postponement. The state's application for leave to appeal will be heard next week Friday. Meanwhile, accused 13 former Free State Premier Ace Magashule expressed his frustrations that the state is playing delaying tactics. Aphumelele Mdlalane, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Meanwhile, former First State Premier Ace Magashule says he looks forward to the asbestos court case that is scheduled to continue in the Free State High Court. Magashule's comments come after the Free State High Court ruled yesterday that the extradition of his former PA Murwadi Chalota was unlawful. Eastern Cape police have confirmed that 3 students have been arrested following a violent protest at Walter Sisulu University's Nelson Mandela Drive campus in Mthatha. There have been confrontations between the police and students since the start of the protest earlier today, where rubber bullets were used to disperse the crowd, while students retaliated with stones and petrol bombs. Police spokesperson is Nobuntu Kandana.
We can confirm right now that 3 students have been arrested, and they will be charged with public violence, damage to infrastructure, damage to state property, and maybe there might be other charges that will be meted against them.
A 35-year-old man is appearing at the Mage Magistrates Court in Limpopo for allegedly raping a 15-year-old girl at Makwebodong in Tzaneen. The accused is regarded as a prophet and traditional healer in the village. Police spokesperson Walisela Lidwaba says the minor and her mother went to the man's house as he was sick. Lidwaba says the girl was left with the prophet when he allegedly told her that she needed to have sexual intercourse with him to be healed.
When the mother realized that her daughter fled, she went to the prophet to get her belongings and was told to pay an amount of money. She then reported the incident to police, and that was when the victim informed the police about the rape ordeal. The suspect was positively identified and immediately arrested for rape and detained at Mage police station.
U.S. immigration officials have detained the family of an Egyptian man charged with carrying out Sunday's attack on a pro-Israeli rally in Colorado. The White House said his wife and 5 children could be deported almost immediately. Mohammed Soleiman is accused of attempted murder, assault, and possession of an incendiary device. The Homeland Security Secretary, Kristi Noem, said the family were under investigation by the department and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency.
The Department of Homeland Security and ICE are taking the family of suspected Boulder, Colorado terrorist and illegal alien Mohammed Soleiman into ICE custody. Now, Mohammed's despicable actions will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. But we're also investigating to what extent his family knew about this horrific attack, if they had any knowledge of it, or if they provided support to it.
Recapping the top story, Free State High Court Judge Philip Lobza has postponed the 255 million rand asbestos removal case to the 26th of January next year. I'm on Delambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
The land is their legacy, but in season 3 of Yellowstone, that legacy is under fire. Kevin Costner returns as John Dutton, fighting to protect his ranch, his family, and everything that can't be bought. More enemies, deeper betrayal, and the battle for the West, it's only just begun. Yellowstone Season 3. This land was won with blood, and it'll take more to keep it. Saturdays at 9:30. Starts 24 May. Only on S3. Open up.
after a 1-0 draw in their opening match in last year's edition of the regional competition. Bafana and the Mambas meet again in this year's tournament opener. This is the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025. Catch the glittering action of Southern African football. South Africa versus Mozambique. This Wednesday, 4 June at 2:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC+, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this Youth Month. All you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note or text message to 061 410 4107 or email info@safm.co.za. Tell us which show you'd like to co-host and what youth-focused issues the G20 should incorporate ahead of the summit. And we could be calling you. Terms and conditions apply.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday. Let's have the conversation. WhatsApp voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, Oscar. This is Fred the Trucker coming from Eastern Cape, now in Western Cape, heading to Gauteng. Oscar, you see, most of the time you see a cow or a sheep or a goat slaughtered on the side of the road, especially on these areas of KZN and Eastern Cape. The people who jump into a farm, grab, one of these livestock, come on the side of the road, slaughter it, take the meat and go wherever they go. It's because there's no patrols, Auskephi. Even these so-called farmer attacks, it's because they know the people are isolated, Auskephi. It's terrible.
Hi, Joe from Durban. I think we all know the Bushiri trip was just a pretext to clip Floyd's wings. Clearly, he became too powerful too quickly, and a clear threat to Mr. Zuma's children, and perhaps to ex-Judge Lope himself. This is nothing to do with Bushiri. This is making sure Floyd doesn't entrench his power as SG and grow a power base for when Mr. Zuma eventually passes on.
Cathy and Fellows FM listeners, good morning. My name is Tulani Nzima in Croydon. Cathy, the NPA needs to be warned that they need to stay away from politics, or else they will continue to make these blunders as they did with their extradition. Their concentration was on catching Ace Magashule at all cost. That is why they named that lady the star witness in that particular case. They failed, and now they've got an egg on their face. Secondly, Floyd is quite an intellectual. Naturally, such people are not people's people, basically. Interpersonal skills they lack. Let him go to Parliament. I'm sure he will contribute greatly there. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy and the team. Wow, Cathy, something I hear about SAFA yesterday. Oh, I can't wait for that dictator Territor Dan to go. Minister must get rid of Territor Dan. No. You can take the bus to the players to play another country with the bus. They fly. Territor Dan must go. The dictator then suffer. He must go now. Asanda Ado.
Welcome back to the sun-drenched shores of St. Marie, where the beaches are beautiful and the murders are mysterious. It's Death in Paradise Season 7. New cases, quirky suspects, and D.I. Jack Mooney, who's still figuring out the island and how to drink coconut water gracefully. Catch the show where paradise meets puzzling crime, because even in paradise, someone always has a secret. Death in Paradise Season 7, Wednesdays at 9 p.m. on S3. S3, open up.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Let's then talk about some of the issues that you had raised anyway with whoever attended that SCOPA hearing on behalf of the Road Accident Fund yesterday.
There were many things. Let me just mention two because this is important. We had raised an issue about the fact that none of the executives at the Road Accident Fund have been vetted. You will recall that many years ago, Cabinet took a decision that all government officials and heads of agencies and senior executives must be vetted to see whether they're fit and proper. At the Road Accident Fund, this had not happened in October last year, even though the chief executive misled us and told us that he had been vetted. It turns out this was actually not true.
Songezo Zibi, the SCOPA chairperson.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 13 after 11 o'clock. Welcome to the third and final hour of the talking show. I guess we are a bit of a talking show, aren't we? Of the Talking Point. You're listening to the Talking Point. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be looking at the National Labour Migration Policy White Paper for 2025, which a cabinet has now approved for implementation. The paper is said to be a significant step in regulating the movement and employment of foreign nationals in the country. Now, as part of the policy, it's set to introduce quotas on the total number of documented foreign nationals with work visas and the number that can be employed in major sectors. This includes agriculture, hospitality, tourism, construction, amongst others. Well, joining us to unpack this, Matthew Parks is COSATU's parliamentary coordinator. Matthew, good morning.
Thanks for having us.
Matthew, can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, morning.
Hi, morning, Cathy. How's it?
Good, thanks. Dr. Dale McKinley, an independent policy analyst and part of the coordinating committee of Kopanong Africa Against Xenophobia, or Kopanang Africa rather, Against Xenophobia. Dr. McKinley, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and to the listeners. Always a pleasure.
Matthew, I see that as COSATU you have already welcomed the approval of this particular white paper. Tell me why. Why do you think it's going to be a significant intervention in dealing with some of the issues around employment and in particular employment of foreign nationals in South Africa?
Well, we welcome for a couple of reasons. One is that we've engaged extensively on it with government, the Department of Labour, and also our colleagues in business at NEDLAC. We think it tries to provide a fair balance to a very complicated, often sensitive, and even often dangerous juggling act. The history of humanity in any country in the world, including South Africa, is a history of migration. So that's one issue, we've got a balance. And of course, it's always difficult to borders struggle with that. At the same time, we have a 43% unemployment overall in the country. And if you look at young people, we have a 72% unemployment. So that's also a ticking time bomb. And we've also seen in the past decade plus a real sort of migration into South Africa by people fleeing countries in much worse conditions. People, leaving Zimbabwe, for example, we have 80% or whatever it is unemployment rate, or other countries have even worse challenges coming to South Africa. And so we need to try to find the right balance. We want to avoid a scenario like we've had previously where you had explosions of xenophobic violence, very difficult for the state to manage, loss of life, horrific abuses, but also damage to investment, etc. But also want to find ways to make sure that when companies hire people, they comply with our labor laws, they prioritize hiring young South Africans first, and also to respect our Labour Relations Act too, which specifies that all workers, even those who are documented migrant or who are undocumented migrant, their rights from abuse and exploitation protected. And you often find some employers, especially in certain vulnerable sectors like agriculture or restaurants or petrol stations or construction, often choose to employ undocumented migrant workers because of their desperation, their vulnerability, and then often subject them to horrific abuses because knowing they're so desperate they won't dare cite their rights to minimum wage, to protection, etc. So it's trying to provide a bit of a juggling act. So it gives the minister a power to set well, number one, to say there must be a limit in terms of how many documented migrant workers a company can employ. Number two, the minister can be empowered to set targets or prohibitions, even whatever, in different sectors, etc., as the needs arise. So it's a difficult, delicate juggling act, but I think it is important to capacitate the state to deal with some issues because it is a festering sore. But this won't solve the solution ultimately. Ultimately, the solution is to grow the economy, but also to resolve the very complex issues in a Zimbabwe, in a Somalia, in a Bangladesh, etc. And obviously, some of those things are beyond South Africa's control, but we think this is one useful way to try to avoid extremes on all sides and try to manage what is a very sensitive and a delicate issue for everybody.
Thanks for that, Matthew. If we look at part of what this framework against it's to do, Dale, it's to enforce, at least as described by the Minister and the Presidency, proper and orderly movement and employment of foreign nationals in the country. Now, one has to ask, well, what has been happening up until that point, that it has not been proper, that it has not been orderly? Have we been able to identify where the gaps might be? And is this policy the right kind of intervention for the problem we're trying to solve for?
Yeah, those are very good questions, Cathy, and for the opportunity. I think basically the fundamental problems have been there for a long time. And they reside not in necessarily the lack of labor legislation. It's two things. One is that much of what this bill and this white paper addresses is already regulated. It's in our laws, and it's simply not being enforced. And this is the fundamental problem, is that our enforcement mechanisms across the board are incredibly weak. The labor inspectorate is effectively neutered. I mean, let's not even talk about immigrants and foreign nationals. Let's talk about South Africans and their employment conditions and things that employers get away with on a regular basis. And so we have a systemic problem about enforcement of legislation. That's the one thing. The second thing is that we have a problem with our immigration system. If you're talking about undocumented, and I'm very surprised when I read Kasaki's submission, that they have unfortunately fallen into the same kind of discourse about a flood of undocumented migrants in the country that have taken over the labor supply and so forth, which there's two problems there. One is the empirical evidence to back that up is very, very thin, and in fact, the white paper calls for much more research and much more evidence-based policy. The second thing is the undocumented crisis is not fundamentally a problem after the fact. It's before the fact. In other words, it's about our immigration system, about corruption and mismanagement within the Department of Home Affairs. We've already uncovered the Lubisi report, which was a government report in 2022, was very clear about all the problems within DHA. Some of them are being addressed, but many of them aren't. So if we're going to have a labor policy that tries to address issues of employment, and we say South Africans first, and we say you can't come if you're undocumented, but we don't deal where the causes of that crisis are, then we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot, essentially. And what you're going to have is a situation which is already happening in places like the United States, where you have Trump, America first, where he basically put all sorts of restrictions on migrant labor to work in the agricultural sector, and essentially is having a huge negative impact on not only employment relations, but also on the fact of productivity. Because the assumption is that South Africans, or in that case Americans, are going to go and flood into these jobs and are going to take those jobs. And that has not always been the case at all. So I think there are many, many questions. There are many questions here that need to be further investigated, many others brought on board. The problem here is that much of this legislation involved no migrant organizations at all. They had no say in this, none at all. So we have to, if we're going to have a comprehensive piece of legislation that's going to address things, it must be inclusive, it must be evidence-based, and it must go to the causes of where the dysfunction lies.
Matthew, part of what this legislation does is that it adds to the responsibilities of the Department of Labor and other associated implementing departments. Now, the question of capacity, one could well argue, has led to the problem that we're dealing with today. How confident are you that this will be implemented while we don't know for sure, or we have not seen anything yet that speaks to a better capacitation or even equipping of the relevant departments, such as the Department of Labor, which will now have more work to do, not less, because they now have to make sure that the sectors are aligning with what is said. If it's employment quotas too, they're the ones that have to go to companies and make sure that those companies are also doing what the law says they must do. They can hardly do that now outside of the employment quotas. What more for when they actually have to go in and actively start counting, physical warm bodies to make sure there's compliance?
Yeah, so look, I think three critical things. One, Dale is correct, 100% around the issue of enforcement, because we already do have migration laws, we already have work permits, critical scarce skills registries, etc. And often in all of our labor laws, including the LRA, which prevents any migrant worker, documented or undocumented, from their rights being abused. And there is a problem of enforcement, which goes to your point. That's across the board. That's at Home Affairs, at Border Management Authority, at SAPS, the Defense Force, Department of Labor, etc. So that's got to be done. And just because there's a problem on capacity doesn't mean we don't still try to tighten the law, try to strengthen it or adjust it as needed, etc. The second one is that the Department of Labor increased the inspectors from about 1,200 during COVID to about 1,800. They've now advertised for 10,000 additional labor inspectors, and there's going to be an additional 10,000 next year hired. So I hope that's going to be a significant boost, because to expect 2,000 labor inspectors to really have a grasp, a grip on when you have 17 million workers in the economy, it's a needle in the haystack approach. So we hope this is going to help. But also, the public labor inspectors need to also get out in the field. They need to prioritize vulnerable sectors where we've seen real abuses, where most workers are not organized, like restaurants, construction, farms, domestic workers, etc. We kind of find all these issues tend to be concentrated. They need to kind of work with organized labor, with trade unions on the ground, because often you find inspectors are said to go and meet HR when they come to a workplace, not to actually meet with workers who can cite the issues. Of course, many workers are afraid to report issues to inspectors too, so that also needs to be addressed. But look, from the experience of workers, from our members, from our unions, is that there is indeed a flood. There is a real crisis, and we can see it time and again. And we can ignore it. We can choose to defer it to PowerPoint, to academic research. It's fine. But what we'll see every few years is an outbreak of xenophobic violence, which I don't think anybody wants. And it is a real crisis. We've seen it in many sectors, in petrol stations, in restaurants, and farms, construction. And every now and then, it erupts into the most horrific violence. We've seen it in the Western Cape. And often it's simply because an employer knows that this worker is not documented. They're from a country with far worse, really terrible conditions. And they will accept, because of their desperation, to sacrifice the minimum wage. They won't join a union because they're scared for their rights. They will accept all the abuses from overtime, dangerous work, etc., etc. And I don't think the argument is correct to say South Africans are not willing to do these jobs. I doubt one can go to Guguletu or Kailija and not find people who would be very keen to be long-distance truck drivers, who would be very keen to work in restaurants, etc. I'm not saying this is going to resolve our issues, but we need to manage it. And we're not saying we need to build a wall approach. We need to kick people out. Migration is a history of humanity, but we need to find the right balance. And I think for us, this begins to kind of nudge government to say, you need to do better, as Dale says, to enforce the law. But we need to find the right balance, because right now we're kind of going to the extremes. We have laws, we don't enforce them. And the consequence is people take advantage, and one can see it in our cities. It is a real crisis. So we need to find the right balance. It's not an easy thing, and I think even if Europe or the US, far richer countries struggle, we'll also struggle, but we need to do something. We need to kind of push towards the right issue. But Cathy, I think we'll all agree this is not the end of the road. This is not the final solution, because ultimately the solution is Zimbabwe to get its feet back on the ground, and Nigeria to sort out its issues, etc. South Africa is in a very difficult situation, but we need to try to find what is the most appropriate, delicate balancing act in a very difficult issue.
Look, and one can't deny, right, the scale of the crisis, and I don't think that that is really the point that one is making here. But you touched on in a very important sector, and I think it's a good example for us to work from. What's happened in the trucking sector. Already there are frameworks that govern how employment in the trucking sector should take place, and that has been completely ignored by the sector. So I don't know to what extent the introduction of this white paper necessarily deals with the whole-scale problem and flouting of already existing regulations and legislation in a sector like that.
I think sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No. I mean, if I don't know if the question was directed, Cathy, was it directed for Matthew?
You can go for it, Dale.
Yeah, so listen, I think you're touching on a key component here, which is the problem in South Africa is we have a highly exploitative and unequal economy. And that is, because through all the trade unions know this, for 25 years, we've had a situation, and it's irrespective of whether you're a foreign national or whether you're a South African citizen, the conditions of work on farms, the conditions of work in many factories and many other places, it's horrendous. And it's simply not being enforced. And so the problem here is, this is why what we're putting on the table is, if you're not looking where the problem lies, then you're band-aiding things. You're basically, you're creating more legislation, more things, but you're not actually enforcing anything. And in that case, if the enforcement is making employers actually treat workers fairly, whoever those workers are, wherever they come from, if they're and otherwise. But instead of putting quotas, for example, and saying you have to hire 70% South Africans and only 30% documented foreign nationals, which might make sense in a context of a particular sector. But if that becomes your solution to a labor problem, then it's not going to work. And this is why, if it was simple as this, then other countries which have implemented very similar anti-immigration or very strict immigration policies, you would see their economies growing hugely. That's not the case, because to grow the economy, for example, is to grow the local economies, small-scale, medium enterprises and other things. If you're only concentrating on sectors that are formal employment, then you're going to drive people into the informal economy, which is even further unregulated and unenforced. And that's going to even drive people further underground. We're already seeing this in Europe and the United States. So what we're saying is that if you want to have a labor problem and a labor issue, don't blame migrants. Don't blame foreign. And the other problem here is that when you start that discourse and you say that the problem is foreign nationals that are coming in, you are fueling a fire of xenophobic discourse. We've seen it. So the violence is not just about a reality on the ground about
Dale,
how employers treat
do you
things.
how do you have that conversation without also coming across as being in denial about what the reality of a situation is, especially for a country like South Africa? Because you can't don't say you have a high influx of undocumented migrants coming into the country, because it's simply a refusal of what is happening.
No, Cathy, I'm not saying that at all. In fact, I started by saying that the problem of undocumented migrants is a real problem. The question is, where's the cause of the problem? That's the question. We haven't had this has not mentioned anything, for example, about the white paper on citizenship, immigration, and refugees, which is the parallel piece of legislation. If we read that in conjunction with this labor legislation, then we'll basically see that we're trying to basically deny a particular, where's the denial taking place? The denial is not the reality of we have problems. The denial is not the reality that there's a crisis of immigration. The denial is that our own system is dysfunctional. And at the borders, at the asylum seekers, at the refugees, at the documentation level. And we keep denying that problem, and they keep seeking the solutions elsewhere. That's the point I'm trying to make. So we're not denying at all the problem of reality.
Okay.
Understand.
Okay. All right. We're going to have to leave it there, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we're completely out of time. Dr. Dale McKinley, Matthew Parks, thanks for your time this morning. It's time for your latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. On the news headlines, Free State High Court Judge Philip Lobser has postponed the 255 million rand asbestos roof removal case to the 26th of January next year. The Powers and Privileges Committee will today consider a referral made by the Speaker of the National Assembly, Toko Didiza, on an allegation of misconduct against a Member of Parliament, and sharp objects and weeds have been found in possession of learners at the Inkunzi Secondary School in Masoyi in Mpumalanga. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
EFC is live this Thursday. The indestructible champion Zakir Badat descends from the Wild Mountains to defend his welterweight title against Nigeria's electrifying kickboxing champion Segun Ogunaiki. Plus, Timnan Lawuli takes on Sibusiso Suvendila, and undefeated Kevin Pretorius steps up to challenge Oswaldo Benedito. EFC 124 live from the World Sports Betting Arena. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, you're listening to The Talking Point. Yeah, I think that conversation around what exactly is going to go into these proposed employment quotas as part of that intervention around migration and managing, the number of people employed in various sectors is a conversation that we will continue to have. Yes, we have to look at both sides, but my concern is around advancing legislation when the necessary resources that are needed to make the system work, even in its current state, if that's not changing, regardless of how much legislation we change or provide as an intervention, it's not necessarily going to bring us different results to what we are seeing. All right, it's time for our G20 series with Lerato Tsebe. Lerato, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your listeners.
Can you believe it? It's 6 months, June. I had to write the date on a form I was filling in recently. And I thought, geez, it's already halfway through the year. Where has the time gone? It also means
I can't believe it either. It's true.
It also means that we're halfway through our G20 presidency.
Cathy, I can't believe it. We only got handed over essentially the G20 presidency in December last year. And I mean, time has just flown by and so much has happened. And I'm just also, yesterday I was just, drawing presence of mind to the fact that not only are we presidency incumbent this year for G20, but also next year in 2026 for the whole year, we will still be a part of Troika within the G20 with the United States and whoever's hosting next to him, I believe to be Japan, if I'm not mistaken. So a lot of the work that we've done this year is actually still going to be very pertinent and relevant even throughout the whole of the next calendar year.
So if we are then to signal the halfway mark, which is quite significant in terms of the G20 calendar itself, what would some of the highlights be for what we've managed to get done over the last 6 months?
Look, Cathy, one thing I want to say and really just make a big pronouncement about this is that I think what we've done very well as a country is selected a theme that was entitled Solidarity, Equality and Sustainability and financed and sort of streamlined rather our work streams very well in thematically being consistently, subscribing to these three ideas. I think that for me, the one thing that has been really well pronounced throughout this entire G20 for the past 6 months is how South Africa is committed towards realizing debt alleviation, not just for Africa, but for the broader global South. I think that President Cyril Ramaphosa did a really wonderful and really innovative thing by relying on private and public sector organizations and individuals, and also, Cathy, being reliant on former African heads of state to come in and to sort of help us carry through this theme throughout the year and see how everybody could apply themselves in realizing Africa's position in wanting to see debt alleviation. Now, here I'm making specific reference to the African Leaders Debt Relief Initiative that was formed in February this year with the Cape Town Declaration, and they were calling for urgent debt relief and better and more fair borrowing costs for African nations. You must remember, Cathy, that at least 23 African countries this year are set to spend over $83 billion on servicing debt payments outside of the continent. They will spend more money servicing their debt to foreign large entities like the World Bank and the IMF than they will on public education, public health, and or infrastructure. So the situation is slightly more untenable for us as a continent. Another group that's come in as well to sort of buttress support for the African Leaders Debt Relief Initiative has been the Africa Expert Panel, which is chaired by our own former Finance Minister, Trevor Manuel. Now, yesterday, Mr. Manuel was just speaking about a lot of the challenges in an interview that African countries are facing in terms of accessing capital and just in servicing our own debt. And he's saying that the cost for African countries to access capital, for example, are unbelievably expensive and prohibitive. He's saying that the risk premiums in general that are attached to African countries borrowing are much higher than they need to be. And this has having a detrimental effect on their ability to spend on much needed public goods, essentially, and social services. One of the things, Cathy, yesterday, let me share something that important that happened. Yesterday, President Ramaphosa attended a high-level virtual panel on the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. This is the big conference that I've been talking about that's going to take place in Seville, Spain, at the end of June. This conference will address new and emerging issues and the need to fully implement SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and also support reform of the international financial architecture. So, Cathy, you can see just by our theme alone for the G20 that we decided on last year, and these two parallel panels that the President has supported, and the fact that the work that these two panels and the theme that we have chosen is essentially going to directly feed into a lot of the discussion that's going to be discussed at the International Conference for Financing for Development. So I really must applaud the government as well for being very consistent and for all of these sort of interconnected, concentric working groups that are really coming coming together very nicely.
All right, that's great. I thought that one of the highlights would be that we moved from not having the US participate in the G20, and now at least we know that they'll be there.
I think, look, it was also in true South African fashion, it's been a very different look and feel for a G20. I don't think we've ever historically, in the 20 years that this G20 grouping has been established, ever had a superpower, a first world country, a member of G7 and G20 say, hey, we're just not going to participate. And I think we handled it very well in our own stride as a country, and we kept calm and we carried on. And inevitably, Cathy, as I've said to you before, this was never our decision to make. The United States has to make that decision for themselves. And I think we gave them room to be able to do so. And so did the other member states of the G20. And there was at no point in time any indication from our behalf, to my knowledge, that they were not welcome to participate in any of the working groups and or any of the engagement groups. So I'm glad that President Trump has changed his mind, and I hope that our American colleagues are indeed getting ready to take over come December this year.
It brings us to the next point of discussion for us as we go through the series, Lerato, today, and it's around the potential discussions and negotiations. So one of the things that South Africa was speaking quite strongly about in Abidjan last week at the Africa Development Bank meetings was what is the message that as a country we are going to be able to bring before the heads of state meeting that is taking place in November? And is that a message that can be supported, that can find resonance with the rest of the continent? And it's really about making sure that it's as inclusive as possible and represents and reflects what would be, the wishes of the continent. Now, when you think about the multiplier effect of all of the countries and stakeholders that have an interest in what is happening at the G20, the issue of messaging then becomes really crucial, because there has to be a main text, as you have put it, that comes out of it.
Absolutely, Cathy. I mean, I think, again, the South African government has made it very clear from the onset that very much our African counterparts, whom are also a G20 member state with through the African Union, that a lot of the work that we envision and a lot of the activities and the texts that we've drafted are very much inclusive of the African continent, as well as ourselves. I mean, we've had a strong focus on trade, Cathy. I think almost every week we've heard something about the African Free Continental Trade Agreement coming out. That's not only specific to South Africa, that's a continental-wide initiative. Number two, a matter that affects every African head, every African country, is the reformation of the international financial architecture, how Africa is forced to and wants to rather repay debt, and how we want to participate in those forums. So I don't believe that at any point in time they have been excluded either. And I think the core messaging as well, Cathy, is that, look, as an African continent, we can no longer just idly sit by here and accept these terms of condition of overinflated interest rates and spending a larger portion of our national budgets and GDPs on servicing debts and in illicit financial flows coming in and being overly taxed, as opposed to spending it on public health and public education. So I think that messaging is definitely resonating, and I hope it was landing. I mean, I wasn't privy to the conversations as you were at the AFDB meetings, but I don't get a sense at any point in time that the messaging and or the work that South Africa has done this year has been specifically and only been about the country.
We're now in recess, in as far as those meetings are concerned. How long is the recess? Is it like a week long or 2 weeks long?
Yeah, it's just this week where we've got no meetings, and then next week it's back to business as usual.
Okay, so what are we anticipating when it's back to business?
Well, next week, keeping up thematically, Cathy, as I've been saying over and over again, finance. We've got the third International Financial Architecture Working Group that's going to be meeting in Limpopo, and you've also got the third Sustainable Finance Working Group that's going to be meeting in Cape Town. So again, we're sort of we're sort of executing this consistent messaging about reform and financing and debt reform very beautifully and very nicely, and I think that we've done very well in this regard.
And I guess, coming back from recess, it's really full steam ahead then to November. Are you expecting that issues around the G20, conversations around that, the meetings are really going to ramp up a lot more than what we've seen?
I think so, Cathy, because you must remember, the next second half of the year becomes a little bit more intense by virtue of the fact that now the Sherpas and the engagement groups and all the ministerial groups, etc., they're going to take all of their messaging and their notes back to the heads of state. And now we're going to have very serious deliberations and negotiations, specifically with the Sherpas, about the text that will be presented to the heads of state in November, and they will then deliberate the final group message about this G20. So I think it's a bit more now. We've got to really showcase our negotiation skills as a country a little bit better and a little bit more sharper, I think. If we really want to get our message home about, Africa can't continue paying this amount or volume amount of money for servicing debts and accessing capital on international financial markets.
Fantastic. Lerato Tsebe, we'll leave it there for this week. Thank you for all of the updates and keeping us abreast on these important issues.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Lerato Tsebe there with our G20 series. And I always say, isn't she just fantastic? She really, really is. Black excellence right there, hey? Yeah, okay, let me stop talking about Lerato before it becomes awkward. Kanya's looking at me like, Cathy, you say this every week. When is it going to stop? Somebody needs to give her own show already. Why doesn't she have a show, huh? Somebody on radio, somebody on TV needs to give Lerato her own show. Okay, anyway, that's where we'll leave it for today on The Talking Point. We're back with you tomorrow between 9 and midday. Have yourselves a lovely afternoon. Up next, the book reading.
13 Southern African nations and North African guests, Morocco, will battle it out for the ultimate glory in the Hollywood Bets COSAFA Cup 2025 in Mangaung, Bloemfontein. Catch the beautiful game on SABC Plus, SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 from 4 to 15 June. Stay tuned to SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Dive into the future with SAIMI, the South African International Maritime Institute. SAIMI supports to unlock maritime opportunities through education, research, skills development, and maritime advocacy. Join us in contributing to a sustainable ocean economy for South Africa and beyond. Explore a sea of opportunities and be part of the maritime transformation. Visit saimi.co.za today. SAIMI is funded by the National Skills Fund on behalf of Department of Higher Education and Training.
With the ever-changing financial landscape, it can be difficult to make sense of all the moves at times. Join me, Jimmy Moyaha, on the SAFM Market Update with MoneyWeb, Mondays to Thursdays, 6 to 7 p.m, as we break down the key market trends, top financial stories, and smart investment insights, all in one place. It's everything you need to stay financially informed and ahead of the curve. Proudly brought to you by Volvo. It's safe to be brave with Volvo.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book Winning the Money Game, a guide to financial well-being by Mlamuli Mbambo, read by Samson Kumalo.
Sometimes it is not what you know, but who you know. Most times people say that this is not fair. Unfortunately, it is just how the world works. Since the world is very old and big, we are the ones who need to adjust to it. I have also noticed that usually we're about 3 to 5 steps from any person we really want to meet. For example, I know the CEO of J&J